Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Today's Saturday, August 9th, 2025, and 100 days of Carney have yielded no results. Yesterday was 100 days since Carney took over the Liberal Party and the Prime Ministership of Canada, and we haven't got anything at all that he's promised when he was running for that job. And I'm not surprised. I'm not sitting here saying, oh, I can't believe that this happened. I'm just letting you know that here we are, and yeah, this is exactly kind of what I thought was going to happen. The good news is that more damage really hasn't been inflicted on Canada by bad legislative decisions, but the bad news is more damage has been levied towards Canada without the House of Commons sitting and with Carney just unilaterally using a pen to do what he wants. So that's very problematic for people who like Canada as a democracy or as a series of people who represent us, the citizens, at the House of Commons. Instead, we've got Mark Carney and Brookfield running Canada as a corporation. And while that may sound like it would be more prudent management, it's turning out to be terrible management. Awful. Land rights in Richmond, BC? Nope. A tribe have established, and I can't remember the name of the tribe, but I'll tell you when we get to the news article. They've established Aboriginal land rights and on 800 acres. And a judge has confirmed this, and people are starting to respond to this and saying, yeah, we can't just ignore this and allow this to continue. It's going to be very bad for people who think they own the land that their house is on when they find out that they don't. Putin to meet in Alaska on next Friday, so that'll be an interesting meeting. Putin is using monologues as a weapon, so Putin is turning into Doofenshmirtz. I can't wait to see what his inator is. Conservative premiers are ignoring the tyranny out of Nova Scotia, and Jeff Evely, I think I get his name wrong all the time, but he was a PPC candidate. He lives in Nova Scotia, and he has been fined $25,000 plus tax for breaking the ordinance of do not go into the woods. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it first. We've got to start with the fires and all of the surrounding, or the fire ordinance, don't go into the woods ordinance in Nova Scotia, and all of the surrounding news that's dealing with that. So here we go. Zach says, waiting around for conservative politicians to denounce the Nova Scotia hiking ban. Anytime now. And it's Mr. Bean laying down, eventually waiting, because it's not happening. It's not happening. Here is John Paul, and he's responding to Tim Houston's announcement of no going into the woods, etc. And John Paul says, has anyone seen any conservative MPs calling out this insane authoritarianism on display in Nova Scotia? Of course not. Just like during COVID-19, they refuse to criticize any infringement of our charter rights. They're all on the same team, and you and I aren't on it. That's a George Carlin skit, by the way. And I think that that's accurate. I think that from Poilievre to Doug Ford to Danielle Smith, I haven't heard Scott Moe, anybody, nobody denouncing this. You can't do that to people. Nobody denounced it in 2023, right? So presumably they see this as prudent policy making to protect people from fire. But I think that I think that it sends other messages as well. Nathan says Liberals pump out $206 million into climate brainwashing. Conservatives push fairy tales that your footsteps start wildfires. Two parties, one scam. They sell fear. And PPC, he says, sells freedom. Ryan is highlighting this Calgary Sun article. Carney government plans to spend millions of dollars propagandizing young Canadians about climate emergency. And Ryan says the Libs want to spend $206 million over 5 years programming your children to be afraid of the weather, while telling them that if you drive an EV and install a solar panel, it will stop forest fires. These people are sick. Yeah, and taking advantage of people's low information and high regard for the news that is definitely lying to them. Here is Tokyo Rosie, and she says, what is it about conservative premiers in Eastern Canada that makes them not conservative? Conservative premiers in Alberta and Saskatchewan aren't perfect, but at least they don't act like liberal douchebags. No, they just stay silent when their colleagues act like liberal douchebags. So, and well, Danielle Smith, what's your game, Danielle Smith? It's just the same game as Jason Kenney, I think, really. Here is Concerned Canadian. He says, anyone else see how counterintuitive this is? This is a meme, but I think that it's an accurate meme. By banning people from being in the woods to prevent wildfires, isn't that basically admitting that climate change is not the cause of wildfires? Yes. Yes, it is. I fear as well, if you're not allowed to be in the woods, maybe an arsonist who's also not allowed to be in the woods may go in the woods and set a fire, and nobody will be around to see them because it's a $25,000 fine if somebody catches you in the woods, right? But if you're an arsonist, is it a $50,000 fine, or maybe they get the tax off because they're doing something in the woods? I don't know. Here is Jeff Evely. I was getting his name wrong before. I think I said Everly before. And he is doing his Woods Not the Woods stick, right? And it's good. It's a good stick.
Hey everybody, Jeff Evely here out in Nova Scotia on Mountain Road in Coxheath. And as you can see behind me, this is the woods. But over here, this is not the woods. This is the Department of Natural Resources, where the conservation officers work, who issue $25,000 fines for going in the woods.
It's not bad.
So he went in and got a ticket, and here's them giving him the ticket. So he's waiting around.
Put us off months in advance for court times, so we just do a SOT for entering the woods without forest travel permit when proclamation is effect. You have a court plea date. Your due date is the 12th of September, so it's a lot quicker, just the ticket. So
okay, yeah, that makes sense. So this is,
want to go that to make it quicker.
Okay, so this is an SOT, and that is for summons to accused. What is this?
Summary offense ticket for today's date. Your information, Forest Act 25 sub 1. Fine is $28,872.50.
Okay, I thought it was 25,000. It's 28,870.
Court costs, victim fees,
Taxes.
Oh, victim fees.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. All right, thanks very much, gentlemen.
Yeah.
I appreciate your courteous approach. Nice chatting with you. All right, take care.
So that was very amicable, and those gentlemen knew what he's doing, and what he's doing is trying to purposely get the fine so he can have a court date to challenge this in court, because he believes it to be unconstitutional, and he's willing to risk all of this in order to challenge the government. So some heroes don't wear capes, right? And so also with this, we found out that they are charging tax and victims fees and a whole bunch of other fees and charges on top of the $25,000 ordinance that you'll have to pay. And that's, I mean, not good, right? That's a lot of money. That's a lot for most people. That's enough to say, you know, I don't want to take out a loan to get nothing other than this court date here, right? And a lot of people would feel that way, I think. And so it takes a special kind of person to go out and challenge these things, to risk themselves. So, I mean, bravo to the people going out there and doing this stuff. It is concerning that none of the leadership is standing up and risking their neck in the same way that just private citizens are, right? Isn't that weird? Isn't that a strange thing? I find it very weird. And I think that it's our leadership, if you can call them that, are subpar to wildly understate it. And so it's interesting to watch, and good job, Jeff. Farming UK says 2 bird flu outbreaks have hit commercial poultry farms in Devon, one near Seaton and one near Lifton, while suspect cases have been found in Suffolk and Wales. Birds don't get flu. And this is here because this is kind of in the same 2030 post-apocalyptic or post-sense society. And we're in a situation where they want to use tests to justify killing entire flocks of birds because bird flu risk and for your safety, comrade. And we're sliding down that slippery slope in Canada, in England. All of this kind of stuff is harmful to the kind of society and a direct threat to the way of life that we used to enjoy. Freedom to walk in the woods, freedom to have chickens, freedom to grow food, right? They're going to take control because they're going to say, oh, bird flu is a real and big risk. And, you know, if one chicken in your flock has it, we have to kill everybody in the flock. And egg prices will go up, all sorts of negative impacts. They use this to control the food. If you control the food, you control much more. And so it's very concerning to me to watch this kind of stuff roll out. And I think these are two sides of the same coin. This is a control play, and we're watching the opening part of this chess game, and we're almost to the middle part of this chess game. We're going to lose this chess game by 2030. That's the plan. I hope I'm wrong. I hope we actually start to play, because all that's happened so far is we've had a week open and we've lost pieces and gained nothing for it. And so that's not good. Watcher Guru, let's do our grab bag of governance. And Watcher Guru says, just in, Canada loses 40,000 jobs in July, the largest monthly decline since the COVID pandemic. This is economic force in action. Donald Trump is utilizing his, plan, I guess, to get Canada to see how beneficial it would be to be the 51st state. And man, I don't know the way out of this. It seems like we're watching a game that we're not participating in, but we're going to suffer the consequences, right? If we lose, then we really lose. And if we win, then things kind of stay the same and your life doesn't really change. But if we lose, your life may change and things will not stay the same as they have changed over the last 10 years, right? And so maybe your life has stayed a lot the same, but there are a lot of things that you can't control that are vastly different. Boys and girls bathrooms, right? A full-blown invasion of the West that doesn't seem to be stopping anytime soon. There are things that have changed that even if you have a lot of money and can insulate your family from it, the wider society has changed in a way you can't control, and me either. So I'm not trying to attack you. I'm just trying to say things have changed in a way that is jaw-dropping in 10 years, honestly. Dusty says, reminder that the Canadian House of Commons has sat in session 21 days in 2025 out of a possible 219 days. Now, that's good news for me, because if they sit, they're going to try and pass laws that enshrine censorship and worse, and probably try to enshrine some transgender nonsense and some other laws as well. And so this naked abuse of power through the legislature is at least minimized when they're not sitting in the legislature. But the downside of this, of course, is that Carney is kind of unilaterally governing Canada, making deals, spending money with no oversight, no parliamentary anything. But again, the downside is the Conservatives vote for everything that the Liberals want. They voted for the throne speech by allowing it to pass on division, which is to say, we protest, but we're not going to protest enough to bring the government down. And so a no vote is recorded from the Conservatives, but they didn't use it as they should have to bring the government down and force another election. They voted for C5, and people say, with amendments, but the amendments are oversight, and we don't have oversight. We don't have any kind of oversight. And how do you get oversight when there's no parliament in session? We'll do it in September. We'll do it in October. You're not going to pass those bills. We all know that you're not going to pass those bills. Floating a plan that's not going to actually be put into action is kind of a bullshit waste of time. So we don't have a plan to unseat this government. We don't have a plan to have sane people put sane policies in place. We have Conservatives who are ignoring tyranny in Nova Scotia and laws that violate our constitutional rights in Nova Scotia. They're too cowardly to speak up about that in real time, but they're saying, don't worry, in September, we're going to fix this by implementing this law that's not going to get passed. It's just not. It's just not. I would be absolutely shocked if Carney came in and said, that's a great idea, Pierre Poilievre. Let's do that. It's not going to happen. The Canadian Sovereignty Act is DOA. It's a branding exercise and nothing more. And I wish that I was wrong, but I fear that I'm right. And so we're in a situation where they're not really doing anything official, but everything's happening anyway. And is that good or bad? It's bad because we're losing oversight and the Conservatives are just allowing it to happen. And the Conservatives are supposed to be the opposition. They're not. Here's Pierre Poilievre. 2 tweets saying virtually the same thing yesterday, hours apart. So this is 21 hours ago, 22 hours ago, and this one's from 3:15 yesterday. And he says, it's been 100 days since Prime Minister Mark Carney hasn't greenlit a single project to proceed. We need shovels in the ground now. The Canadian Sovereignty Act will legalize pipelines and turbocharge Canada's economy. I don't think it's going to get passed, buddy. And CBC is reporting Conservative leader Poilievre says Prime Minister Carney's development agenda is stalled, and he's promising to legalize pipelines through new legislation to speed things up. And Wiretap says, Pierre, when are we going to start talking about the racist war on white people and Canadian culture that's happening throughout our Canadian institutions? The Conservatives don't talk about things people care about or things they can change. And the things people care about that they could put pressure on to change, they don't talk about at all. Right? And so they talk about things that they can't do anything about and ignore things that maybe they could change the conversation about. They could at least push the Overton window, but they don't. And that's on purpose. Here's the other tweet that Poilievre says. He says, no oil pipelines, no LNG, no road to Ring of Fire. All Prime Minister Carney has done is hold meetings, set up new bureaucratic offices and talk. Enough talk. Where's the action? And the whole point was to do nothing. The whole point from the beginning was to do nothing. That's it. Caroline says a bombshell judgment was released yesterday by BC's Supreme Court declaring Aboriginal title over land in Richmond, including private property. If this stands, it has massive implications for private property across BC. Read the highlighted sections for yourself. And so here's part of it. It says, Cowichan's Aboriginal title burdened and burdens the land over which the Crown grants of fee simple interests were issued. I find that the Cowichan's Aboriginal title, which is grounded in the prior occupation of the Cowichan ancestors and constitutionally protected interest in land, is a senior interest land vis-a-vis fee simple titles which derive from the Crown grants. Aboriginal title is a burden on fee simple title. I don't know what fee simple title is, but everybody's very upset. And Caroline continues, she says, the judgment itself states the question of what remains of Aboriginal title after the granting of fee simple title is the same lands should be reversed. The proper question is what remains of fee simple title after Aboriginal title is recognized in the same lands. The province and Canada can and must appeal this decision. It's why the work of the organization I'm involved with the Public Land and Use Society is so important. It's not just public land anymore, it's private property too. Support our work here, she says. And yeah, pretty wild. John Rustad has seen this as well. We'll get there in just a sec. Juno News has seen this as well, and they're reporting it. Juno says, in a decision that is sure to ruffle feathers, BC Supreme Court Justice Barbara Young declared the Cowichan, I'm getting it terribly wrong, I'm sorry, tribe have established Aboriginal title to roughly 800 acres in Richmond. So if you owned land in that area, you had fee simple title in that area, maybe you had a hunting camp or something like that, but it's your land, you've paid for it and things like that. Now, not so much. Now you can't go there. Sure, it's your land, but you can't go there for half the year because, it's not your land. Weird, right? Here's Dallas Brody of 1BC, and she's talking about this.
Just when you thought things couldn't get any more insane in this province, a BC Supreme Court judge has just ruled that Aboriginal title will be recognized over the private lands in the city of Richmond. Wake up, people. Your fee simple title is now uncertain and possibly invalid. And you thought you owned your land? Well, you'd better think again. This is exactly why 1BC has been raising the alarm about the threat that Indigenous claims pose to the future prosperity of British Columbia. Make no mistake, to undo the damage that this is going to cause will require every one of us to stand up and demand changes to the Constitution of Canada. We at 1BC are here to lead that movement. We will fight for you and fight for the future of British Columbia. Join 1BC to fight for the future of this beautiful province.
There you go. So 1BC is responding to all of this. John Rustad, who conceded an election that was, I think, obviously rigged, and he just said, no, it's fine, we'll just do this. John Rustad is responding to this. He says, private property rights are the foundation of our democracy and our country. Any decision that attacks our private property rights needs to be appealed and overturned. Indigenous title and private property rights cannot coexist over top one of another. Losing private property rights on your home, your land, and undermining the rights that underpin our country is wrong. Reconciliation cannot be achieved by taking rights away from one group and giving them to another. Well, I would agree with most of that, and it's interesting to see. I wonder where this fight is going to go, and if this judge is going to be slapped around, if there's going to be a notwithstanding clause dropped, if there's going to be some kind of correction here, because it seems like they need to correct this. Otherwise, people are going to start behaving as if this is binding, and then you're going to see people losing their land based on this decision, and that's scary. Maxime Bernier is talking about immigration. He says an immigration moratorium and getting rid of multiculturalism to instead embrace assimilation, mandatory language proficiency, civic education, and allegiance to core Canadian principles like rule of law and individual liberty. I agree with the Western Standard Online. This is the PPC platform, and the editorial says Canada needs an immigration moratorium. That is not xenophobia, it's self-preservation from the Western Standard, and you can read the article here if you're interested. Yep, pretty interesting. I don't know. It doesn't seem like. Again, I talked with John Carpe the other day, and I said, how do we solve this problem? And he said, stand up a political party and get your ideas out there and win in the political arena. And I think the political arena is completely rigged. And I think that that's not the way that we solve this problem. Like, there are checks and balances. There should be checks and balances. There were checks and balances that worked, and now those checks and balances don't work. The courts are corrupt. The politicians are corrupt. And if you have a political party that's standing up for this, unless you're Donald Trump, you're not going to win, right? I mean, look at what happened in Estonia. Look at what happened with that. I think it was Estonia. No, it wasn't Estonia. Slovakia. The guy who won the presidency, and then the EU said, no, he didn't. And then they had to run it again. Look at Le Pen in France. Look at all of these situations. Look at the United Kingdom, and it doesn't matter who's in charge, Labour or Conservative. Everybody's letting the small boats in. Everybody's betraying this. It doesn't seem like, if you're on the world stage and you're one of the viable parties for leadership of a country in the West, you're not allowed to support closing borders. And indeed, even Donald Trump, who has won the presidency in the United States, supports closed borders, supports sovereignty, supports legal immigration over illegal immigration. He's painted as a monster and a terrible person and so on and so forth. And I can't get behind that. I think that it's ridiculous. But that belies the game. The game is not even. The game is not fair. And that's an understatement. It's actively rigged. If 70, 80, 90% of people wanted a change, those people would be gaslit by the 10% who are in charge of the media to believe that they're racist for wanting this change. And so, again, I feel it really, really hard to believe that the only way to win is to play in this rigged system, beat the rigged system, and then fix the rigged system from the inside. Because once you get there, look at what's happening to Trump. There are judges that say you can't do that, and then he takes it to court and they say, okay, yes, you can. If you didn't know, if you weren't aware, right? And say you win, and then all of your economic advisors come in and say, sir, if you turn off this immigration tap, it's going to cause all of this economic damage, blah, 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 and that'll be on you, sir. You'll be the terrible guy, you'll be the Hooverville guy of Canada, right? And I mean, we've already got that, Justin Trudeau. But still, the implication is they're going to come in and they're going to threaten you with a depression. They're going to threaten you with everything to get you on board with their plan. And if you don't know, if you are not aware of that, you're going to believe them because you think they're working in good faith, and they're not. And so I can't believe that that's the only solution. I can't. I don't think that that's the only solution. But I don't think the solution is as easy as that, right? That sounds like an easy road compared to what I think is necessary to restore the West to what people believe the West to be, because now it's not. The West is, I think, almost fully communist at this point in time. So I don't even know that the United States has a republic that's a representative democratic republic, right? So anyway, I digress. Frustration at times, but life is like that, I guess. One more tab before we say goodbye to the stream. Mocha is reporting a big bombshell. Alberta's police chief was appointed by the same board that he chaired. Danielle Smith's government silently went along with the fact that the independent agency Police Service Oversight Board, tasked with finding the most qualified Albertan to lead their new provincial police force, chose its own chairman, Satpal Singh Parhar, for the job. Having hidden his critical conflict of interest concerning the safety and security of Albertans has rattled critics who are now calling for the resignation of Chief Parhar, the entire board, Minister Mike Ellis, and Premier Danielle Smith. Last week, in our in-depth report raising national security concerns about the questionable selection of Chief Parhar prior to our discovery that he had served as chair, Mr. Ellis's press secretary stated that the process was independently led by the independent agency Police Service Oversight Board and adhered to established public sector protocols for executive-led appointments. Or executive level appointments. This revelation shatters the credibility of that statement and raises serious questions about integrity, transparency, and accountability at every level of Danielle Smith's government. So, as I was saying, Danielle Smith seems great if you're not really paying attention, but if you are paying attention, you can't help but say, what's your game, Danielle Smith? Honestly.